very welcome to the Locker Room podcast. This is episode number 24. Would you believe this is the first time we've done a live podcast episode, and we've brought on some really good guests for tonight. Maybe it'll be an absolute disaster. I'm here with Ross Bennett here beside me, my co-host Ross. It could crash and burn completely.
It could, but I've got a good feeling about it. Two great people and guests we've got in today, minus us two kids. So hopefully it brings the standard up.
Exactly. At least we don't have Joe Coulter here to mess it up as well. So
well, he is here.
Is he here in the background? Right.
He's somewhere.
Yeah, let's keep him in the background. I heard there's only place for one defensively minded down coach and manager in this podcast. So Joe didn't make the cut once again. Instead, we brought in his older brother and hero, Stevie Poacher. Steve, it's good to have you back. You were only on 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I was here on chat book with a good old chat. So thank you, also to be back again. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. No, great to have you back. I'm delighted as well. I've got Colm Nally. So Colm, I've tried to get on over the last couple of months, and Colm, I was on to you about coming on at one stage. I didn't know that you'd come into a Coaching Roundtable as your first episode. So I promise we will get you on for a full interview about your experiences and everything like that, which are really, really interesting. But it's great to have you, Colm.
Thanks very much, Ciaran. Looking forward to it.
Good stuff. Colm, I was looking, I'm going to get you to do a plug. I was looking on Twitter, and obviously you're the coach with the Meath senior football team and have been for the last few seasons. And we'll get on to that in a few minutes just to chat briefly about it. I won't get you to say too much in preparation for the All-Ireland. But tell us a little bit about your book. So it's Game-Based Training Sessions for Gaelic Football. This is the second edition, because I know you had one out previously, and also tell the listeners how they can get it, what email address and everything like that.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Ciaran. Well, look, it's a self-published book. It's just really, like, I've been involved for years in coach education through Leinster, and an awful lot of the times you do the courses, people are looking for resources. So I just got the idea of throwing some together. I done a book about 2 years ago, just game-based training activities, and it went really well. So what the new one is basically game-based training sessions. So it's 22 training sessions, all based on sort of specific and bespoke sessions that the coach might be able to use and implement, and really to give them ideas. Kind of branched out a little bit into some sort of mental gym work and some nutritional advice, and there's goalkeeping sessions there. So look, this is a hobby to me, right? And it's just something that I said I'd explore, and it's gone very well. And we're actually on our third print now. So the last book sold over 3,000, and this one's on course to sell the same. And I really just cap it at that, because it becomes a chore then and too much. And I can't handle the feedback about the spelling mistakes and things like that. So I just put it at that, especially when you have teachers involved now, they'll be picking holes in everything,
Exactly. The administration and logistics challenges. Tell us the email address that people can contact.
It's just simple, CN Training Manual @gmail.com, and you get a bounce back mail there with all the ways we can get it. And look, again, it's more of a labor of love. It's not expensive. It's really, you're not really looking to make money. You're just really making cover costs and get it out there. Look, I enjoy sharing information, because when you get involved in sharing, as you guys well know, it keeps you on your toes, and it means you have to go and source new information as well. And that's what I like doing. And I know, like, lots of people contact me and send me ideas and things like that, and that's how we roll. It's great to do that, and I enjoy doing that.
Yeah, exactly. I'd recommend anybody as well, make sure to check out Colm's YouTube channel. So it's Colm Nally. Just search for Colm Nally. Colm, I was looking there, you've got over 3,000 subscribers. Every video you put up, there are 2,500 people viewing it and everything like that. And there's some brilliant quality kind of drills and practices and everything like that on it. So yeah, it's brilliant to see. I think we'll get on to it afterwards, just about a new age coach and person who's sharing. And it's a little bit different than maybe when people started back in the day, but we'll chat about that in a minute. Anyway, Stevie, for anybody who doesn't know you, I mean, I don't think there is anybody who doesn't know you, but anyway, anybody who doesn't, so you're a PE teacher in St. Joseph's in Newry. You're a columnist with Gaelic Life, under 17 coach of County Down team as well. Obviously ex-Carlow manager. You have on your Twitter profile Mourne Mountains. So you've spent so much time in the Mourne Mountains, you've actually become the Mourne Mountains as well. Is there any other job that you feel you need to add on to that list?
No, well, Colm, thanks. No, listen, I've taken on a manager's job there this year with Bryansford Senior Club in down here as well. So, which has been enjoyable despite the fact that it's been such a short season. And but listen, look, it's as I said to you, like a bit like Colm there. You know, I thoroughly enjoy hearing, you know, sort of sharing knowledge, and for me, the greatest resource we have as coaches is each other. And I've always said that, like, and you know, sharing is learning. And even the article with the Gaelic Life started about 10 years ago. It's actually hard to believe. I still get a bit of abuse about it because I haven't changed my profile picture in the Gaelic Life in 10 years, so I still look like about 28. You know, you know, I'm 41 now, so and I'm not changing it. But no, but listen, the Gaelic Life thing started with 4 articles: a warm up, a main session, a cool down, and a general article. And Declan Bogue at the time said to me, "Look, would you continue doing it?" And you know something, I really enjoyed it. I don't think people on the outside realise as well, the Gaelic Life is a completely voluntary based paper as well. So people that write articles for it, it's completely voluntary based from all the contributors, bar the lads whose obviously livelihood depends on it, you know. But so it's a fantastic production, and you know, it's GA people that are behind it, and it's a GA driven paper, and I think it's a brilliant resource to have. It's a pity that other provinces maybe wouldn't follow suit and have a Munster one and a Leinster one and maybe a Connacht one, you know, in some capacity, because there's a market for it, Ciaran, you know. And it's a great read, and it passes a good hour and a half, and you get some great information out of it. And not just even from a coaching perspective, but you get great information from all the codes of Gaelic games, you know, your camogie, your hurling, your ladies football, you know. It gives schools football great coverage, and it's a fantastic product, and I can't speak highly enough of the paper.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're definitely heading in that direction, aren't we? Where there's more tactical analysis and more in-depth analysis through print media, through digital, on TV, and it's great to see. Okay, we'll get cracking into it. Guys, just really quick word about our sponsors. This episode is sponsored by Ripped.app. They've been with us now for the last few months, Cormac and the lads. So it's a coaching platform that connects performance coaches with their clients and athletes. It helps coaches program more efficiently and effectively and deliver individualized training programs to their clients and athletes via the Ripped app. So it's Ripped.app, where they have supportive exercises, technique videos, and other content. The platform streamlines a collection of workouts, well-being and training load data, so coaches have their data all in one place and can quickly gain insights they need to optimize the performance and improve results for the clients and athletes. It's perfect for S&C coaches. Ross, I know that there are some online training devices being used in Arsenal Football Club, and I know whenever Arsenal do something, you're definitely going to jump on that then, introduce it into QPR.
I'm a bit old school. I like the pen and paper with the programs, but for anyone who trains remotely, it's a perfect resource. And like you say, it's something that potentially is going to come into the modern era more and more in the next few years. So it's a great stuff that Cormac and the lads are doing. Yeah,
absolutely. So it's a great tool for S&C coaches and also sports scientists and normal technical coaches involved with teams or working with individual clients, and also gyms and online coaches. Ripped are used by Swim Ireland, Kerry GA, and of course ourselves here at DSS, where we've launched the online training service as well with Ben and some of the lads, some of the S&C coaches. So it's not a bad company to be in with some of the Kerry boys, so we're really delighted to be involved with them. We have a special offer to share with our listeners, so head over to the Deely Sports Science website, deelysportscience.com, and you'll see a link to sign up to Ripped in the blog section for 2 months free. And it's the perfect time now with the off season of the club section of the year coming up, and just to get the programs out to your players online. It's a nice kind of fast and efficient way to do it. Ross, I'm promising this year we're going to get Joe Coulter fit. So I reckon now bring in the professional. We tried when we were involved with London GA and failed miserably. So it's time to bring in the professionals.
Yeah, hopefully his knee can take it this time, because he had a lot of issue rehabbing his knee. So we'll pass him on to a good physio as well. Yeah,
exactly. We'll get that in. Okay, so thanks to Ripped for their continued support, and head over to their website, ripped.app. Okay, lads, I want to start off first of all by just jumping in a little bit about your previous experiences and how that may have molded your coaching. Colm, I'm quite interested because you were a goalkeeper. So you started as a goalkeeper, and I'm interested, how did that form your coaching then, or there's not if I think of it, there's not many goalkeeping players who go on to be quite famous coaches. I know I was just looking through my notes, and obviously the ex-Spanish manager, I'm going to embarrass myself with my pidgin Spanish, of Julian Lopetegui, I presume he's Basque, who is now the manager of Sevilla after beating Man United in the Europa League final, was Real Madrid manager. I know there was obviously Dino Zoff and a couple of the Italian managers during the time as well. What was the effect of your playing career then on your coaching, Colm? And do you bring some of those things even now into your coaching with the Meath lads?
Yeah, that's interesting. Like everybody else, I'm from Balbriggan originally, so I was always kind of knocking around a few Dublin underage teams. But for a few years, my claim is I was the most famous unknown goalkeeper in the country. And what I mean by that was I played in goals for O'Dwyer's, and that's John O'Leary's club. And John played outfield for the club, and he was the Dublin goalkeeper for so long before Stephen Cluxton. So everybody knew John played outfield, never knew who played in goals.
Yeah, that
was me for so long. But I moved down to Louth when I got married at 25, and I went on to play with Louth for 5 years. But like everything else, a lot of lads are putting goals simply because they're no good anywhere else when we were growing up, right? And I think that was my case really. So I was tall, and they needed someone in the goal. So I started off playing in goals. I played a lot of soccer and goals and things like that, but I got to enjoy it. And at that time, there was no goalkeeping coaching. So that kind of got in line, especially for Gaelic football, got me in line with kind of coaching, because I had to source ideas to sort of train myself as a goalkeeper, if you know. So that was my first step into coaching, was sourcing goalkeeping materials. I used to buy a lot of Simon Smith's books and CDs. He used to be the Newcastle goalkeeping coach. And I tried to implement a few ideas from him. And what I found now, Ciaran, which is very interesting, just thinking about it there today, is like when we would video our matches now, we'd video two locations, one from the side, one from behind. And I'm drawn to looking at the one from behind now. And that's, I feel, because I played so much from behind. So I'm looking at spaces and how to make spaces, how to stop spaces. And one of the things that I was always drawn to do was the kind of numbers on players' backs. Because I had this theory in my head that if a fella with the low numbers is going to take a shot, he's going to wallop the ball. If a fella with the high numbers was going to be placing it. So in a way, you were analysing then, you know. So I kind of brought that in to that. And I would always feel that I'd always say the goalkeeper's the jewel in the crown. Now that's changed now. And part of my coaching philosophy is the less shots that the keeper has to save, the better the game for him, because he's organised better. And that's the keys now. You're looking for communication. You're looking for kind of scanning, right? You're looking for restarts. Like you're crucial to it now. I'd like to think that I try to have kick-out strategies and things like that, but it's all evolved so much now. But at the start, it definitely shaped my thinking of kind of how I coach today, for definite.
Yeah. Do you know what? I was just thinking about Stephen Cluxton during the week. I don't know why it came into my head, but you know the way people would have said that Cluxton reinvented the game of Gaelic football, and he changed it forever. And I thought, in my mind, I don't think he did actually. I think he just did it better than everybody else. I think he just was a better goalkeeper, because if you think about it, a really top-class keeper, you want him to be meticulous, you want him to be very fit, you want his kick-out strategy to be excellent, you want him to be very mobile, you want him to be commanding, good shot stopper. So I don't know, did he, in your mind, did he do something different, or did he just do everything really, really well?
I as I said, John O'Leary was I was very tight with John, close to John for a while, and he was sort of my first kind of fella you'd look up to. But I used to speak to him a lot, and he used to slice a ball. And we all wore Adidas flankers. I don't know if you're aware of that. They were rugby boots with a hard toe. Now, the thinking behind that was more power at the time, right? You're looking for long distance kickers. But he constantly had this kicker where the ball seemed to slice off his boot. And I remember asking him one time, is that by accident or by choice? And he said it's a disguised kick. So even back then, they were looking at ways of implementing it. I remember, and because I'd be old enough that when Stephen came in, it was Davy Bourne was ahead of him, and another fellow called Mick Pender. And Stephen's kick-out wasn't what it was today. You've done an awful lot of work behind the scenes with Gary, I forget Gary's surname there, Gary Matthews, right? They were the first. They brought in a heavier ball from Italy. It's a soccer ball. They actually sourced it, I think, from around Juventus academies. And it was a dead ball, and they practiced with that to give them more accuracy. So they kind of did probably were the first to implement sort of a regime of practice.
Yeah.
But you're right, like keepers like John O'Leary and other keepers, where they had strategies that were relevant to their time and they were looking for new ways. But I'd say you're right, he refined it into what it is today.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Ross, you were a former youth defender for soccer. Who were you with? Brentford and a couple of other clubs knocking around. How do you think? I mean, it's interesting because if you think of how you used to play back then in Brentford Academy, it's very, very different to the type of play that we are involved with QPR Academy, which is very technical, very nice football played on the ground and everything. Like, does it work that you're nearly gone the opposite way in that, okay, I don't want my team playing like we used to play when we were young, or how does it work for you?
Yeah, I think I had to get my head around that technical, new, modern era game, because we just used to stick it in the channels and put your head on it and block. But then I think these days we've lost that art of defending. So we used to head the ball, we used to get our body on the line. So that's what you can bring to the table, because if you can't defend as a centre-half, full-back, then you're not getting a job. It doesn't matter if you can play into the midfield or you can clip it to the 9. And the same goes for Gaelic. Number one job role is defending. So I think that's something that I'm passionate about, and that's something that I think I bring to the party with the academy players and developing them here. Yeah,
definitely. Stevie, what do you reckon? I mean, if you think of Gaelic now, the cornerback is like an attacking outlet. He's getting up, he's scoring, he's getting goals. The wing back is spending as much time in the opposition half as his own half. Do you think the art of defending is lost, or am I just coming from a point of view of I'm down the soft southeast of Ireland, not up in Ulster?
No, I think you're right. And just before I came on the show, Ciaran had a conversation on the phone there with James McCartan, the Down minor manager. We were just chatting about training tomorrow night and what we need to do. And, you know, we played a challenge game at the weekend. We committed a lot of individual fouls. And, you know, we're not, obviously down teams don't play very, very defensively. So, you know, at times we will leave ourselves quite exposed at the back. And maybe the art of that one-to-one individual defending isn't coached enough.
Yeah.
Maybe tackling isn't coached enough as a skill. And I know Colm's with some fantastic innovative drills there that probably incorporate that 1v1 scenario, because sometimes we go into a games-based approach and you can hide in games and you play overload games and underloads and the likes of that, and plus ones at the back and how to break down. And we spend a lot of time trying to break down a blanket defensive training maybe, and we don't spend a lot of time in isolating our defenders in a 1v1 situation or 2v2 or 3v3. And when it happens in a game, then they get nervous, and it's probably one of the reasons why the likes of Kilcoo here are successful in Down, is because, you know, that they have defenders who can trust themselves and back themselves in a 1v1 situation. You know, Dublin were the same. The team, ironically, that has got closest to Dublin in the last decade for me is probably Mayo. And Mayo were the one team in their prime who had 6 defenders who could actually mark man to man, you know, in the game, and were confident enough of doing that. But just come back to the point that Colm made about Stephen Cluxton. I think one of the biggest changes in Cluxton's approach to kickouts, and I'm sure Colm might agree with me here, was the speed of them. You know, it was taking them 10 to 15 seconds to get kickouts away, and it was allowing the opposition to get organised, etc., etc. Now they're away in super quick time, but then again, a lot of teams maybe don't press Dublin's kick out every single kick, so therefore, you know, he does tend to get a lot of soft and cheap, you know, kickouts away. But it's the quickness of the restarts now and the speed in which they're given now, or Ciaran, that makes the game so interesting and so fast as well, you know.
Yeah,
but the rules have changed. Rules have changed, and I go back to 2003. I think that was the first memory I have of cornerbacks who could play football. Ryan McMenamin, for example, was as comfortable going forward in the final 21 as he was in his own 21, you know. And I think that was a lot down to how Mickey Hart had coached his team as well, you know, very much a games-based approach to training way back then. Through Paddy Talley was the coach in 2003 before Paddy moved on, and Mickey brought in, you know, other coaches and the likes of Gavin Devlin and boys he got more recently. But, you know, Tyrone, Mickey always had an athlete-centered approach where players took responsibility, you know, in training, and therefore when it came to the game, they could think for themselves on the pitch as well, you know.
Yeah, I think there's always that place in the modern game for individual coaching, isn't there? No matter what level, no matter what team, you know, you see it in the Premier League where maybe some of the teams in the lower half, you kind of get the feeling that those players feel, some of them feel that, okay, well, I can't learn more. And then the really, really top level coaches like your Klopp and your Guardiola and Jim Gavin and them in and Colm in the inter-county world, that they're trying to improve that player at all stages. You know, you never stop learning. Stevie, I'm interested. It'll be an interesting one for anybody who is following your down team, and I know it's an underage team, so we don't want to put too much emphasis on you know, success and stuff like that. But with Carlo, at times you played with a very defensive setup. Obviously racked up big scores in different games. Now you're in down with James McCartan, who's like, you know, the ultra modern player, even back in the 90s, all action, attacking, and everything like that. I'm interested to see how the team is going to play and how you've set them up with more the philosophy around the team.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you how we're going to play after we play for Fermanagh in 3 weeks' time in the championship. No, but listen, you know, look, it's horses for courses, Colm, or Ciaran. It's horses for courses. You know, like at the end of the day, you know, when I went down the road to Carlo, you know, you're looking at their record, at their previous record, a lot of psychological scars from big beatings. You know, a shocking defensive record, conceding an average of over 20 points a game, which is comical. Like when you actually think about it, you know, you're never going to win a game of football, but you might win one or two. You might outscore a team 22-21 or 23-22, but there'll be sporadic wins. You know, there'll be no consistency in it. You know, but to go probably, you know, 14 games in the National League with just one defeat in 2 seasons, like was huge for the group. You know, and a lot of that came from being just really well organised here. You know, we did do a lot of work, you know, on our shape and our structure, but we also did a lot of work on transitioning from defence to the final third, which for me is the hardest challenge. Like, you know, of trying to install a system of play. You can easily set a team up that are hard to beat, but you also need to go and try and win the game. And, you know, I always was of the assistants, you know, give me a forward line like Cora Finn and I'll play a different way, you know. And we were probably just unfortunate with Carlo that we just really had 2 really good scoring forwards. And, you know, when you took Paul out of the team, you know, you were taking a huge chunk of your scoring out of the team as well, you know. So you sort of had to play quite a rigid system. Plus what I found, Ciaran, with the players as well was we had a lot of and you know, from playing against Carlo a number of times, we had a lot of strong runners of the ball. You know, Sean Murphy, Brendan Murphy, Sean Gannon, Kieran Moore, you know, really good, Jordan Marcy, really good athletes, really good, powerful runners. So therefore, we set our team up based on a more of a counter-attacking style of football, which we would run the ball a lot more through the hands than we would kick it. And it was actually into 2019 when we were starting to evolve a little bit. We were using Brendan inside, and in pre-season we had worked on 2 or 3 different plays where we would play a long diagonal ball into himself and Dara Foley, trying to get used to the mark. But then what happened was Paul got an injury at the start of the National League, and that scuppered all our plans. You know, so all of a sudden, you know, to move Brendan out of the middle, you were robbing Peter to feed Paul, etc., etc. So we had to sort of play that way, you know. But listen, you know, it's for me, and Colm will probably agree with me here, I don't see myself as an offensive coach or a defensive coach, goalkeeping coach. I see myself as a footballing coach, you know, and that's then whatever group there, you look at the group of players you have, you know, you see what your strengths are, you see what your weaknesses are, your perceived weaknesses, you know, and you try and maximize what you can out of the group. Like, and that's
yeah. Colm, you've got a real challenge being involved with a county in Leinster, because you can set up defensively, you can go so far, you can perform, you can beat some of the smaller teams or the weaker teams, but the looming threat of a Dublin, and I'm using this as an example, I'm not looking for insights about how you set up against Dublin and stuff like that, but I'm just looking for insights as regards, like, you know, that a defensive game plan like that won't beat the best of the best. And the tactical innovations now coming on stream from Kerry and Mayo and even Donegal and the likes of them are, you have to go out and attack as well. So if you want to beat the likes of Dublin, if you want to win in All-Ireland, if you want to win a province, you're going to have an attacking game plan as well and take the game to them. I mean, is that a difficult thing for, I'm not going to call Meath a smaller county now, but a less successful over the last few years to come up against the kind of might of a Dublin?
Oh, yeah, look, it's a very interesting question that you pose, and I can look at it from a couple of angles, because I coached Louth for a couple of years with Colin Kelly, and it's the same thing there, and it's a bigger task facing Dublin with the likes of Louth than it is with me per se. But I remember when Stevie's Carlo played Dublin down in in Dr. Colm and gave a really, really good performance, right? And showed that if you get that part of the game right, that you'll compete with them. Now, fellas aren't stupid. They know that, right? And this is, I mentioned it to you earlier on about what a pre-mortem is. Like, if you're really looking to improve a team, you have to spend a lot of time with them. And I'd be fascinated, like, about the quick change of managers and things. It takes a long, long time to build a team. It takes a long time for you to actually really get into the nuts and bolts of coaching of a group and know them, right? So if you're comfortable with a team, you can say to them, listen, lads, right? And I think, like, this is, a lot of people don't like saying, but you can kind of say, like, we might not beat these guys, right? But what we can get out of it is a performance that we can build on if we perform A, B, or C. And if that continues our graph on the rise, you'll beat them one day, right? That you have to kind of have some sort of outcome added, right? So, like, years and years ago, like, Meath underage teams are competing and beating the Dublin teams. So you've got a constant stem of players coming through that haven't got that fear of failure against Dublin, right? Meath have to target themselves against Dublin and Kildare and compete with them to enable the progress, and they know that. So their selling point. We watched them closely. If we felt that the body language was defeatist, or if they were kind of, you know, just there to pass an evening, we'd sense that. They're not. They're there because they want to improve, and they feel, right, they actually want to play them, right? They want to measure themselves against them, and they want to go back and say, okay, this, that, and the other. I'll tell you a very interesting story. We played them last year in the Leinster final, and we had a few plans that worked, right? And we were really pleased with them, right? A few plans, and we were kind of saying, you know, this is working, that's working, right? But what really kind of stumped us is they figured it out in real time, the players themselves, right? They sussed out what we were doing and what we were trying to do and cut it off themselves. Now, that fascinated me, you know, that fascinated me, that they could think like that as a group together. And that kind of shaped their way of how we're going to prepare if we ever come across them again. Means we need to keep more and more things up sleeve. I don't know if Stevie would understand that, but we knew that we had a certain way of getting to them, and we were getting certain success, and then bang, they sussed it out and shut us out. And we hadn't got another plan. Do you know what I mean? Because so that kind of stumped us a little. But that's all what the learning is now. And again, you know now, right, like that, you know, that certain things work against them, but you've got to keep producing, and you got to keep disrupting them, and you got to be curious, and you got to be testing, you got to keep doing all them things. So your training has to be sort of geared towards that.
Yeah, I think Stevie, isn't it that you're setting up a tactical, you're setting up your team in a tactical way that can bring the team to the finishing line, so that 10 minutes to go in the game, look, if you do what we're putting forward here, this plan, we'll get you to 10 minutes to go, and then ultimately then a little bit of luck and a bit of creativity and talent and stuff, then we'll win out the game. And it's a tricky one.
It is. Yeah, there's no doubt. But Ciaran, just, it's interesting what Colm said about them working it out. Colm, here's a very interesting story for you. I was playing golf there a few weeks back with Niall Morgan, the Tyrone goalkeeper, and he was telling me that in the All-Ireland final in 2018, they had 2 or 3 kick-out strategies. And he said, you know, they obviously had worked on them in the lead up from the semi-final to the final. And he says within 10 minutes, Dublin had worked out what all 3 were, Colm, you know. Yeah. And that's serious on-field leadership. That's serious on-field thinking. And that comes obviously from the coaching and the exposure that they're getting, you know, and the level of detail that they're going into. And ironically, the year that we did play them in Portlaoise that year in 2017, you know, we put up a credible performance, and we did feel we would love to have taken them down the last 15 minutes in the game. And I think if Brendan had been sent off, we probably would have, because he was sent off in the 45th minute. I think there was 3 or 4 points in it at that stage. And I think that, you know, they were starting to rumble a little bit. They would have beat us. They would have found a way to beat us. But I would love to have just taken them down that home stretch just to even be in the game. And it was only really an injury time that they did stretch away when we were down to 14 men. But I actually got a real vested interest in them after that from a coaching perspective. And I went to watch them on numerous occasions. And what I found was their attack completely changed after the Ciaran game. They had more, you could see so much more basketball-orientated moves in them. You know, the 1-in 4-out formation where they literally hugged the sidelines, you know, had one man, and the one man in the middle cleared the D, you know, and leaving space then for someone else to, you know, they were vacating space and occupying space, and they were doing that extremely well. But the one big thing I took from them was the width they introduced into their game after that was just on a scale that I'd never seen before in Gaelic football, you know, and listen, it takes a serious amount of discipline, but it also takes a group of players, as Colm says, who are willing to learn and never stop learning. Like, and that's a very difficult thing to ingrain in a group.
And what you're saying there too, right, is by them in putting that wit on, right, that gives them more chances of 1-on-1. So it goes back to what you brought up at the start about the 1-on-1 tackling and the 1-on-1 sort of training. You know, you have to kind of prepare when you're playing Dublin for defending 1-on-1s, because they look for as many 1-on-1s as possible.
Yeah, they seek it out, don't they? Okay, we'll move on, guys, because we could spend all night chatting, and Ross has to get home to the missus. Stevie, an interesting one came up between us about what has this club season now shown to us about how you can and you can't prepare a team for the championship. So it's obviously a unique situation where it was a very short period versus other years where pre-season in GA club is, 3 months long or something like that. So what did you learn, or what did you see?
Well, interestingly, I heard Brendan Hackett today, who managed Ballymun, is that right? Brendan,
yes. Yeah.
I heard Brendan today speaking about, they just decided this year to cut back on long video analysis, long meetings, because obviously they had no option but to cut back on them, because you weren't allowed, obviously, to meet inside, etc., and things like that, and change room chats and talks and the likes. And he said, look, we just thought we'd go out and train and enjoy ourselves and give the thing a right good rattle. And it helps when you've got a team like he has got, but at the same time, the approach that we took at Bryansford ourselves was very, very similar, in the point of view being that we just seen it as a free hit. But we also took a very much a football approach to the training pre-season, and I think the players enjoyed it more. And I think all club managers would probably feel that this is the one year that there was a retention of players, big numbers at training. And I think part of that was you didn't have the 4 or 5 month long slog, and it makes me think here, you really need that volume of training for a club season. Does a club player really need 4 or 5 months of pre-season? And again, this is something that the GA need to look at from a split season point of view. If there is a definite club season beginning and end, and a definite county season beginning and end, obviously club coaches and club managers can prepare and plan a little bit better. But I was at a very interesting Zoom before lockdown, and it made me really think about a lot of stuff. It was Martin Loughlin, Performance Lab in Tyrone, he's a sports physio, but a lot of his teams have actually gone on to be very successful this year in their club championships. But he was giving advice to club managers returning to play, and the one wee thing was very interesting. He says, don't chase 2 rabbits, in the point of view being, he says, just go after one thing, either just focus on your football or focus on your fitness, and don't try and try and juggle too many things. So it's an interesting one, and I do feel that Ciaran, we maybe need to just bring in a bit more enjoyment back into the club season, expose the players to a lot more games. But we're fortunate down, that there is a good volume of games. Normally we would have 18 to 20 league games.
Yeah.
In town club football, which is brilliant for the club players, and there's very little disruption. I can't really complain that. The town like Tyrone have a 3-month window of no club action midway through their season. That's unheard of, So I think moving forward, I think we've learned some good lessons on how the season can unfold.
Yeah, definitely. Ross, you obviously have plenty of experience in this area of in with the professional football teams like this year. So do you want to tell the listeners just about, it was a kind of a shortened, intensified pre-season, and maybe just what are some of the things that worked well, and how you prepared the players to be, at 100 miles an hour then for the beginning of the season?
Yeah, I think it was we was never going to win in a way, because players, we've had a few injuries, we've had more injuries than we'd normally have pre-season. Like Stevie said, we're trying to get them up to scratch with more fitness through games and game-based stuff, because of course we isolate a little bit of some fitness work, but you need to get them prepared for the first game within 2 or 3 weeks, and they haven't played for 4 months. So it was very difficult. I think we've done well in terms of gradually building back in, and you can't expect too much of them too soon. The load thing's important, but I think also just recognizing that some players will break, unfortunately, with that sudden increase in training, and you just try to manage them the best you can. So very difficult situation. We'll take lots from it on the analysis of data and how we went about it, coaching wise and fitness wise, and hopefully we're not in that position ever again.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because as well, if you think of the old-fashioned way of pre-season in soccer and also in Gaelic, like the first month is running, no balls, laps around the pitch and gym on the side of the pitch and everything like that. But like, we would have started from day one, wouldn't we, with the ball, straight away the ball introduced and technical skills and some possession based. I mean, Ross, I think most clubs are doing it that way, but I'd fear that there's some situations, maybe some sports, that they're not doing it.
Yeah, I mean, we never done that. We never done just the fitness only stuff, and we always had interspersed with. It's so important that you get your technical work, your tactical, and like especially in football, you haven't got time for managers to come in. They haven't got 3-4 year tenors. They've got short turnaround, so they've got to set their team up and maximise their time. So as soon as you get in, the technical work, the tactical work, it's essential. And then you isolate the aerobic stuff and see where your squad are and what they need and what the individuals need to get up to the physical level to compete. Yeah,
definitely. Colm, you brought up an interesting one which I didn't know about. You said mood follows action with your players, and I'm quite interested. You said some coaches and some players don't know what that is, and I had to hold my hand up and say, well, that included me.
Well, it means a whole lot, here, an awful lot, and the concept comes from a fella called Rich Roll. He's an ultra athlete in America, and he has a mega podcast. He's all about self-improvement, and he preaches this mood follows action. And I've been looking into it a good bit, and basically I tried to touch on something about it in the book, and it's basically this, right? You arrive into training, you might have had a bad day, you might have been fighting at home, you're not in the best of moods. The last thing you want really is a coach that's going to come down heavy on you, or a heavy session. It's just going to make that mood worse. So your learning is very, very limited, right? Even down to this, I'm a big believer, right, about emotional intelligence on the pitch. Like, because you've been involved with London and Wexford, same way Stevie and Ross has, right? All these boys can play football. Mm. But what separates them from the really top guys? And a lot of it comes down to emotional intelligence. So I try to simplify it for younger players, and it's simply this. If you make a mistake playing the game, right, what follows that is your mood. And your mood is going to be a little bit downbeat. Now, if you remain in that mood, you're going to make further mistakes. So I really preach to the guys as much as possible. When something goes against you in a game, right, as quick as possible, do something positive. A simple hand pass, okay, a good tackle. And then start talking to yourself. Reward yourself. Say, that's brilliant. Well done. I'm back in the game. That sort of self-talk, right? And that changes your mood, if you get me. So mood following, it's basically just don't think, do. Right. Yes. I'm trying to say that to fellas. Now, a lot of young players, it's the emotional intelligence that we need to educate them in. That stuff happens in games. It's how you react to it, right? And you can kind of help your reaction along the right path. Like, I've seen lots of players that make a mistake. Let's say if they've an open goal and they miss it. They could be gone for 5 or 10 minutes of that game. They're contributing nothing because they're dwelling on it. Where if you can say to them, get your hands on the ball, get a 5-meter hand pass, and your brain starts telling you now, you're back in this game, you've done well, and things like that. So your mood will follow your action. So if your actions, like, we all make mistakes, and you're going to make mistakes, you kind of have to encourage them to make mistakes. You have to create a struggle for a young player without them being a struggle. So in training, right, set up scenarios that you're going to ask them questions, but they're doing something they love in games. You get me? So for instance, if you're going to create lots of mistakes, and there's your coaching cue, right? Your next job is to get your hand on the ball and make a simple pass. Okay, and start saying, right, well done, Colm, I'm back in. And that sort of stuff. That's hard to do, and the younger you can get players thinking like that, the better, Yeah. So that's kind of where that comes from. But he's an interesting fellow, Rich Roll. Now, some of his podcasts are out there, but you pick up a few little nuggets,
Yeah, it's the brilliant old advice, isn't it, at the beginning of the game, where the selector comes over to you and he says, just do something simple at the beginning of the game. Win the ball, lay it off, and then play yourself into the game. Ross, we do a good bit of work, don't we, in the academy with the sports psychologist does, with just be in the now and even practice that at home and before a session and when you get up in the morning.
Yeah, and I mean, that's sports psychology firsthand. Do you know what I mean? That's how psychology applies to the game. And we say stay in credit. So if you've got a player who's taking a few risks, and which is what they're paid to do, they might be wingers, that might be their job role. But like Colm said, it's not gone right for them. Stay in credit. Give yourself two to cap out, play to the centre of the pitch. And like you said, you get the action, you get the mood back up, and then you get yourself in credit to be able to try again and try and take on the man again. So that's phenomenal. I think that's psychology. That's how it should be in the applied world, and how you apply it into the game.
Yeah, definitely. Colm, I'm interested, and I'd say a lot of listeners will be interested because they see a lot of your practices and drills and everything like that. what would a typical training session for you, what does it look like? Let's say if we're talking about intercounty level or senior club or something like that.
Well, again, that ties nicely into parts of the discussion that we're having here tonight, is because, like, we know now we have one of the beauties about these split seasons and the club season that now is you had your fixtures in place. So we know our first championship date is the 7th of November. So we work back from that. Our periodization plan starts back from that, and we've all our dates lined out. And we're very much like most county teams, up to speed with our S&Cs. I don't even like calling them S&Cs. I prefer it to be just a conditioning coach, right? Because people lose sight of what it is. But we have a brilliant conditioning team in Niall Ronan and Calvin Finnegan, and they let us condition the team through football. So they monitor everything. Okay, there's no heavy slog, particularly now, and the odd occasion they might say less or more, but basically as much as we can do through the football. So to give you an example there now, we played a challenge match there on Saturday. So we're back on the pitch now, and we're only allowed to train Tuesday, Thursday, and one weekend. You're only allowed to train 3 nights a week. So basically, believe it or not, now I say this in a good way, but I have nearly 6 hours access a week to the players. Now, that's brilliant, right? But in that 6 hours, if you think about it, right, you can't do situational coaching for the whole 6 hours, right? You can't do problem-solving coaching. You have to mix up your tech, your tack. You have to mix up everything. So I would always now start a session with, I would love now, we work really hard on getting slick angles of passing and tight passing. So you'd always have some hand passing exercises. Then you what I always try to do is play some sort of possession games using the foot. Right, and then we always have shooting in your exercises. Now, the shooting has to vary from unopposed to semi-opposed to opposed, or there'll be no transfer into the games. And then there has to be tactical work. So that's where the pretense of the whole stuff is sent. Now, we would always grade the session. We give an RPE at the start, and the condition coach would always say, make tonight's session a 7 or make tonight's session an 8, depending on what the load is and the games and things like that is. So everything is pre-prepared, and we've already gotten out this week's training plan. I have the content. I send it off to the S&C coach. He has a look at it, send it off to the manager. The manager now dictates at the end. He'll either say, I want more of this or less of that. And that's the way it is, and I'm quite happy with that, because the more people that look over your session, you're going to get. And then what I try to do really is try to have minimum input during the session. Throw lots of different scenarios. I don't tell them what the object is of games. I'll give you an example. One of the things I'm working on, and I don't mind admitting this, I think Eddie Jones is a fascinating coach, and I've been kind of really looking up a lot of him lately. And he's been playing a lot of these games where simple possession games, but after about a minute or so, he blows the whistle and every player drops on the pitch and do a press up or a roll and the back up. I've been working with that a lot, and I tell you what it does, it creates chaos, right? The only condition I put in is that the game must restart with a foot pass. But as soon as the guys get up, they could be in mid-attack, they could be mid-defense, right? And then all of a sudden, they're on the ground, they have to get up, they have to scan again, they have to look. It's just brilliant, right? And the feedback from the players afterwards is they lose all sense of what they're trying to do. And it's great. So what we're targeting there, now I didn't tell them what we're doing, they have to figure themselves out. It's just challenging their decision making, right, on and off the ball. And so I would I wouldn't talk a whole lot through that. Say we're playing a 12-minute game, I just let it play. I try not to stop it, because then it becomes about you and not them, that sort of stuff. But there has to be some sort of feedback in it. So that would kind of be the breakout down of our session. But again, we would be working back from our first championship date, which is the 7th of November. And that gives us a great, it's brilliant to have that date. We wouldn't plan any further than that, and we could get, I think we worked it out, we 32 sessions. Now and then, which gives us a good platform to plan.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, that's really interesting. Stevie, how, I won't ask the same question of you, but I'm interested, and I say people would be very interested because everyone has their own way of doing it. And Colm said the way that he does it a little bit, and my way of doing it with Ross and London lads was somewhat similar, sending out the coaching sessions at the beginning of the week and everything. But how did you organise that? So let's say, like, looking at Carlow or any other senior club that you're involved with, do you sit down and design all the sessions? Do you get input from the S&C? Does the manager decide everything, or what's the dynamic there between kind of manager, coach, S&C coach?
Well, I suppose, Ciaran, it depends on your management and your setup. Carlow as a manager was very much you're in charge of the football, you decide what way we need to go, etc. He might have said the odd time, whatever, look, I think we need to work on X, Y, and Z, or I think maybe we need to look at this. Strength conditioning, Carlo was excellent. You had strong links with Carlo IT. The players had all took, real great ownership in their conditioning. They were a well-conditioned team, in my opinion. Damien Sheehan did a lot of work with them in small pods. The Dublin-based players as well did their own work in Dublin. With the Down Minors, it's the same. We have an S&C coach that works with the young lads. Obviously, the gym work now has come to a halt, unfortunately, because we were making great strides pre-COVID or pre-lockdown, as you call it. And I think it's an important part of their education, rather than not so much physical, but even mental, for them to get into a psyche of gym culture, and doing it the right way, Ciaran, and such, So
yeah,
we that sort of aspect is left to them, as what Colm said there as well. The trust is placed then in the coaches to condition the team, very, very similar. The S&C coach might come in at the start and do a little bit of pre-warm-up stuff, which obviously helps prevent injury, but it'll be minimal. And then it'll be passed on to us. Down Minors is actually quite refreshing for me, because normally I'm taking warm-ups, bulk of session, all the coaching, but it's great actually to come in and, one of the things that I was delighted when I spoke to James last year was that, he's got a good management team there. Mark Poland's in already for a couple of years, so Poley does a good bit of coaching. So, for example, yesterday, we just stayed behind at the end of training yesterday and said, right, Tuesday night, I'm doing the first half of the session tomorrow night. We committed a lot of individual fouls, so I'm going to work tomorrow night quite a bit on tackling, different types of situations, put them into different types of situations in the tackle, just harness that little bit of technical, work on the tackle. And then Mark's going to do some games with them based around, manipulating 3v2 situations. We had about 3 or 4 3v2s, 4v3s that we didn't capitalise scores from. So you're taking stuff from, it's good that you have games, Colm will probably agree with me here. It's good when you have games, because when you have games, you can look at stuff that you need to work on the following week and harness. But for me, Ciaran, I take a slightly different approach in training. I give the players a lot of ownership. So I would bring the tactics board down now, and what I would do is I'd send one group away, to set the team up the way they're going to play for a small game of maybe 8 minutes. And another team would go away with another board, and they would decide how they're going to play. And I would give them scenarios. So Blues, you're 2 points up. Okay, so how are you going to manage this 8 minutes or this 6 minutes, whatever it happens to be? And as Colm says, you're trying to create situations where the players are doing the thinking and you're not doing the thinking for them. And then when we come in, I suppose the teacher had on me the 2 stars and a wish. So you'd say, right, 2 things we've done well, and get the feedback off them. And then, right, what's the wish? What can we do better? And that's always a good philosophy I always take with underage teams, is that little 2 stars and a wish, that you give 2 positive comments and then 1 thing that they could do better. Because, sometimes the coach will come in and say, look here, you didn't track him there now. Why did you not track him? And he's saying, look, you also give the ball away. And then he's going, did I do anything positively? And even from a self-esteem point of view, it's not great for you. So I pull you in, I say, Ciaran, great, that was a great piece of play you were involved in there. You seen the man off the shoulder, whatever it happens to be. But you see, the next time this happens, just maybe try this, and look, everybody's different, and everybody's got their own unique way of coaching, Ciaran, and for me, a games-based approach. Well, I love Colm's idea there now, where he talked about that the chaos, because sometimes you need that, where players understand in games there is going to be those situations that you have to respond to. And the unfortunate thing is, and Colm and Ross will understand, when the players cross the white line, Ciaran, there's only a certain amount that you can do after that. It's up to them to work it out, and the really good teams can work it out. I watch Kilcoo quite a bit here in Down. 9 titles in the last 10 years or 11 years, whatever it is. Dublin are the same. Their on pitch leadership and their on pitch adaptability is just class. It's great to watch. It's really, really great to watch.
Yeah, definitely. It brings us on nicely to a couple of questions. We had some really good questions from some of the members. Actually, they were emailing and WhatsApping me privately. Colm, one for you. One member said that some of the videos on your YouTube channel will be quite prescribed. So go around the cone, get around that pole, then you must do this, then you must do that. Like, what percentage of your coaching is kind of working on that individual skill versus that more chaotic environment where we just let them off, we let them learn, and we don't give them much instruction?
Well, that's a great question, and I often think about that sometimes. Like when we use the words game-based training, people kind of expect that all the activities are going to be games. Where if you can imagine, it's a jigsaw that we're trying to create. Like, you know, the match is the complete jigsaw. So what I'm doing in them sort of things is I have kind of picked the situation of a game that I want to work on. So that's the entry level of it, if you get me. So for instance, one of them could be kind of coming off an angle to take a shot. So that's why you'd have the poles and cones. I'd be illustrating about, I'd be a big believer on kind of cutting the runs, no straight lines. So I would have set cones and poles up to kind of, firstly, to show the player why not to go straight. You know, so that would be your first part. Now, like, again, a lot of my sessions would be kind of linked up, where I'd be looking to see by the end of the session some of these moves in a game situation, if you get me. So I would kind of be taking parts of the activity I want, break it down into kind of some sort of demonstration where they kind of learn the movements, they get what it's about, and then we try to put it into free play. That's my style. I'm not saying it's the right style. It's something that I've kind of always done. And again, it goes back to, as I explained there, about the 6 hours. If you have 6 hours with me, like, it gives you time. Like, we're very, very lucky to have that time. So it gives you time to do situations like this and bring it forward into games, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. I have to say, my own philosophy as regards coaching is, I call it scenario-based training. So match scenario-based training, where you're setting up a situation that you're likely to see in a match on every weekend. Stevie, you became famous and infamous with Colin Parkinson's show when you put up about the transition. You had 6 or 7 transitional practices on Twitter that you did for a coaching clinic, which were brilliant. And I would have called them kind of scenario-based coaching. So what happens when you lose the ball and you have to quickly turn, get back down the pitch and defend? Then you go from defending to attacking. But it was interesting.
Yeah, listen, the only reason Colm probably got stuck into it, Ciaran, was because he wouldn't understand coaching. The only closest Colm got to coaching was when he got rid of the managers when he was playing. Like, that was the only closest he ever got to managing, when he got rid of them, you know. But no, listen, listen. For me, every game for me, Ciaran, has to have a focus. It has to have a purpose. And Colm would understand what I'm saying here when it says, like, I love telling the children the name of the game. So, for example, at underage level, like rub the nest, you know, a wee simple warm-up game. So they understand when you're going to rub a nest, there's eggs in the nest. You're going to rub the nest, you're taking the eggs away, you know, and they might be 4 squares with 4 or 5 balls in each square. You might have a group of players running everywhere, going and stealing a ball, bringing it back to your own nest. You know, just a wee simple warm-up game we would do with underage teams. But the purpose of the transition thing was, and I'll explain the game actually that actually caused the sensation. It was called, like, sort of blast-off transition or something. It was okay. And the reason behind it, Brawley actually made a bit of a laugh of it on the Sunday game one night. And, you know, another man who I don't think would know his arse from his elbow when it came to coaching. But listen, this is the interesting one. So the purpose behind the game was that you had 10 defenders protecting the D, which way most teams do now, and 4 left up front. And the play would involve for about 20-30 seconds. So if the attacking team hadn't scored in 20-30 seconds, you blow the whistle, you throw a ball in, and the defensive team blast off. Okay, so if you think, and you're trying to picture a symbol where a young person understands the firework. What happens, children, when a firework explodes in that city? It goes everywhere. So we want players going everywhere. We want the man and the ball to have options. So it's nearly like 3 simple things when you counter-attack. You know, you want pace, you want numbers, and you want width. You're trying to get that picture, you know, you're trying to paint a picture for the young people. And you know something, Colm will tell you as well, not just young people. You know, some of the adults that you coach as well will have come from a very, very dumb level of coaching. Colm might pick up, and this is no disrespect, but he might pick up a player in Meath who has come from maybe a smaller club where he maybe hasn't experienced Sigerson football or 3rd level football, and he's coming from very primitive coaching. Like, I remember one of my first couple of sessions with Carlo, and this came from Ear Road players who were one of the best club sides in Leinster in their time, and were in a Leinster final last year. And I had Ear Road club players saying to me, you know, this is like, you've got to understand, we've never been coached before. And I'm going, wow, 25 years of age, you've never been coached, you know, and that's scary. So, you know, you're trying to do that, Ciaran, you're trying to make them innovative. You know, Colm obviously would have his critics as well as myself. You know, who does he think he is putting this stuff up on social media, etc. But as I said at the start of the show, Ciaran is learning. The greatest resource we have is each other. And the more people that you know, coaches, people that coach and people that understand the game, you know, really appreciate what Colm's doing there with his groups and things like that as well. And And I do as well, because it's invaluable. And
Yeah.
Steve to get into his book and
No,
pick a
definitely.
different theme for a warm up or something like that, And
Can I just jump in, Ciaran, if you don't mind? Because
Yes.
I think it's important, like, and it goes to yourself as well. Like, it's difficult putting yourself out there, right? And when you put yourself out there, you're going to get people knocking. It's the easiest thing in the world to knock. And I have to say, like, I mean, a lot of that didn't sit comfortably for a while because it's a different generation. But it's only for the likes of Stevie and that. Like, I remember before I even got to know him, I'd send him off an email and say, any chance of the notes from this and that. And he was always very forthcoming, right? And it's people like Stevie and yourself that kind of encourages other people to share, right? And look, I remember somebody saying to me, "You're very brave with putting stuff out there." And I said, "I'm not brave. Firemen are brave, right?" But I know what he meant. He was kind of saying that there's too many people picking holes and saying this, that, and the other. And it's the easiest thing in the world. Like I always say to everybody, right? If you get something from it, you get something from it. If you don't, you don't. Nobody's telling you this is the way to do it or that. But I do think what I get back from it, from sharing, is meeting guys like yourselves who share ideas, and that's how I continue to learn. Because where are we going to get our information from unless we kind of share with each other that,
Yeah, absolutely. No, long ago I stopped listening to people giving out about stuff. Ross, I'm going to jump to you because I know you've to get going. The last one for you, Ross, just about to tie it in with the games-based approach and the scenario-based coaching. You see merit also in that isolated skill practice, don't you? And I mean, you do it in your day-to-day work, but also we probably tried to implement it a certain amount with the London guys as well.
Yeah, and I think it's important to tie in with what Colm and Stevie said. It's got to be realistic and specific to the game. So we work on a passing drill, but it's you put a picture in the player's head, the specific moment of where he's going to move to receive and play forward, or when someone has to support underneath the ball. But the reason why I find merit in it is because I feel like sometimes we put them into a game situation and we just expect them to be able to do it. Well, actually, we have to take them back to the lab. And like Stevie said, some of them players haven't been coached. So you do have to break it down. But then it's all about balance. So when I was at Chelsea, we used to have a rule that 30 minutes maximum of unopposed work, because it has to become game-based after 30 minutes. Now, you might not use that 30 minutes, but that was the cut-off point. Because you do need players to be able to figure it out in different situations. And it doesn't always look nice and pretty when you're receiving the ball on the half turn behind the cone and playing forward. You've got opposition in, you've got interference. What happens when the movement of your number 9 isn't how you want it to be? You can translate these into Gaelic and football and hurling, principles still apply. So it's all about scaffolding. So you work on a specific thing in the first part of the session. Then how does that then transfer into your possession practice or your principles? How does that go into your phase and your games? And you bring a real focus to the session. And that's how players learn, by having a real focus on an individual part of their game. And how does that then go into a situation where they've got to problem solve, they've got to think. And that's when, as a coach, the ability to step back at times and the ability to go in and spot and fix, that's when the art is the coach here, and when and where to do it. So it's all about balance, but I do 100% see merit in that isolated practice if you make it real and link it to their individual job role and their performance.
Yeah, exactly. I do like as well when the coach nearly sets out the stall at the beginning of a practice and says that there's going to be quite a lot of feedback in this. So the players know that, right, we're going to come back in, we're going to debrief, we're going to have a chat, we're setting up our tactical situation here, and there's going to be quite a lot of discussion versus, okay, guys, I'm going to let you play here. I'm going to let you just learn and problem solve yourself. And after, 10 minutes or whatever it is, bring back and start chatting it at that stage. Ross, we did get one question for you. I know you like this one from one of the members about, so if you think about it, a GA team, under 14, under 15, under 16, going into the off-season period, they're not allowed into the gyms. He's wondering for that team, is it appropriate that they, A, do a weights program, B, should it be a loaded weights program? And I've thrown in, if not doing that, maybe they will be. If not doing that, what are some of the stuff that they could be doing?
Yeah, I mean, the myths of young kids not being able to load and things like stunting the growth and not good for their development, I think have long passed. So it's safe to do so for a 14-year-old. But what are the capabilities and competencies of that 14-year-old? Are they good movers? Have they learned the different movements? What's their training age within the gym? If they haven't done much before, then I would just stick to basic movements and body weight and teach them how to move over that period. If they have got a good training age, and of course, fine to load. But I always say with the kids, it's, we talk about minimal exposure, minimal dose. If they haven't done any weight training and now they do 5 weeks of body weight, the next 5 weeks you might only need to go up to 10, 15 kilos, because that's overload for their body and they're learning and adjusting to that. So be really gradual with the kids, and that's with anyone, even with adults that haven't trained before. Be gradual with the kids, make sure they move well and it's safe to do so, especially if it's remotely and you're not there coaching. And just see how the individuals, get on within the group, and that's where you individualize it a bit more.
You do need to be careful, don't you, in terms of they're going through their growth spurt, like their maximum rate of growth between the ages of, for boys usually 13 and 14, for girls maybe 11 and 12. So you do need to be careful of that, and also watching their load on the pitch, because they're completely interlinked, aren't they? Like if you want to do a lot of work on the pitch, you may have to do a little bit less in the gym, and vice versa. If they're not doing as much on the pitch, maybe it's an opportunity to do a little bit more, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think people just have to realise the gym work's only supplementary to the sport. The only reason you do the gym work is to make them better at the sport, or make them able to do the sport more. So you make them stronger, able, more robust. I don't like the term, but it's fitting here. It's a supplementary training tool to make them play the sport more and get them better at sport. That's all it is.
Yeah, definitely. Stevie, linking in with something that you had mentioned earlier, I mean, people get obsessed about, well, let's get the kids or the adults in the off season now, let's get them into the gym and get them really strong and everything like that. Wouldn't it be lovely to see in the GA a little bit more emphasis on, okay, this is the off season, but can we play a little bit of more sport, more of the game, meet up for whether it's a five-a-side soccer or a bit of hurling skills or even Gaelic football, and just for it in terms of the club to become a little bit more recreational at different times, if you have the opportunity.
Ciaran, you stole my thunder, because I was going to make this point actually when Ross was talking about isolated practice and things like that. I met Ciaran McGeaney last year for a cup of coffee in Newry, and I just wanted to pick his brains about everything to do with football, and Ciaran was very open and everything about, from fundraising right through to football. It was great to pick the brains of a guy who's been at the top level for such a long period of time. And he's made a very interesting thing to me, and it's something that struck me, particularly over the last few weeks, and playing a good bit of golf myself. And I would go to the driving range, and I would hit 40 or 50 balls. Okay, so before you go out to play the game, you go and you hit 40 or 50 balls as well, and then you get into a rhythm, and you get in and you get better, and your skill improves, and your striking improves. And he said a very interesting thing to me. He says, how many senior intercounty footballers, and this might sound mad, but how many of them actually own their own football, right? And it's an interesting one. You're going, maybe, I wonder how many of them actually do, and I would say, if I had asked the Carlow lads who actually owns a football, they could borrow some from the group and they could borrow some from the bag. But how many boys actually own their own football? And how many boys actually go with their football? I go back to Martin Clark going to Australia the very first time. I was fortunate to work with Marty for 2 years as manager of Enrique back in 2010, when Marty came back home in 2010 for the first time. I had 2 seasons with him. And I got a great insight. I struck up a good friendship with Martin, because he was based in our school in placement at the time for about 18 months. And I struck up a really good friendship with him, as well as a coaching relationship, and still do to this day. And Martin talks about Australia quite regularly, man. He says when he first arrived, for 6 weeks, it was skills based. All he had to do was just harness the skills before they even thought of throwing him into a game. But he said even the more established senior players in Australia carried a ball everywhere they went. They were bouncing a ball in the corners of the club. They were going for their dinner. They were passing ball to each other in the queue in their dinner. Everywhere they went, they had an oval ball in their hands. And it makes you wonder, and you look at the skill levels of hurling and the young players you see with a slither and a hurl in their hands. And I'd love to see, and I know, Ciaran, there's a bit of stick fired out in lockdown about all these wall and ball sessions. Also, they're not a new phenomenon. They've been around for 50 years. Of course they have, but nobody fucking does them. You go into the street now and you say no ball in the wall or whatever, or nobody's let you kick a ball, or they're kicking the ball to the wall, and the parents are saying, stop kicking that ball off the wall. There's nobody promoting it. And I went down to Newbridge last year to Paddy Gribbon to do a coach education thing with the Newbridge Club at Derry. And they have a fantastic wall ball right beside their club. And I says to him, take your under 14, a really good under 14 team. Take your under 14 team in here at 6:45 with their trainers and a ball each, and spend 15 minutes on skill work. 15 minutes. You think of the volume of touches of the ball they would get in 15 minutes. Then go out into the pitch and do your games-based stuff. And there is an unbelievable session. If you were doing that 3 times a week, imagine the extra development of their skill that you'd be partaking in. And you'd be saying that to your senior footballers now. How many of them are actually still kicking the ball right foot, left foot off the wall, right hand, left hand. Extra 10, 15,000 touches a month, whatever it happens to be. Sean Kavanagh landed in an underage presentation back and raked away back boy in the around about 2010-ish, 11-ish. There was a young lad called Conal Baldwin, Lord rest him, died on Christmas Eve that year, and close to of the club had asked me, Marie's mother, my mother-in-law, Lord rest her, she had worked with Sean at the time, and she asked me would get him down to the Kingdom to give the wee group a lift, because this young fella had passed away unexpectedly, and Cabinet came down. It was now wet January evening. I always remember the message he told the young lads. This is a man who had won 3 All-Irelands, multiple All-Stars, had achieved everything in the game. He says, I'm going down tomorrow morning to the Moy pitch with a bag of footballs, he says, and I'm practicing my free kicks from the 14, the 21, the edge of the D, the whole way around, he says, in an arc. He said, I'll hit 40 frees tomorrow morning. He says, and many of you boys are going to be doing the same. And it's a very interesting one, Ciaran. That's 10 years ago nearly, or a bit longer, whatever. But it just makes you think to yourself, we can get so warped with strength and conditioning and GPSs and all this, and the fundamental skills of our game are so easy to develop and harness, and I'd love to see more of that. Really
absolutely. Sean's book is somewhere up there, and I finished it a couple of months ago, just at the beginning of lockdown, and it's brilliant in that sense. The amount of time he spent on just pure repetition, kicking the ball over the bar, and as you say, free kicks and everything like that. And it was brilliant and an eye opener for me. And he's my accountant, so I have to keep him happy always and let him know how things are going every month. Colm, a last question, and it's just linked in with that, really, the point that Stevie made. I mean, hurling is a very, very skill-based sport. I always remember Good Counsel College down in school in Wexford, and the Kilkenny lads, the hurl was stuck to their hand going around in class with the ball, the leather ball and all. And like Ross will know, in terms of professional football, the players are constantly doing flicks, keepy-uppies, messing around, football, tennis. In Gaelic football, are we missing a bit of a trick there in terms of just that skill development?
I don't know. I can only speak for myself, and again, I was going to mention, my club here is Newtown Blues, and I have been coaching in that club for 20 years. I've been under sevens coach, adults coach, goalkeeping coach, right? And that's what we do. And I always preach to the guys, if you're just doing what I say or any other coach say, it's not enough. You have to be doing stuff on your own, right? Now, that's fair enough, but sometimes fellas want to be guided along them lines. I find since I was at Louth and Meath and places like that, and coaching in with Leinster in the provincial team, we used to set up what's called it's a soccer phenomenon, arrival activities. That when you arrive to training, prior to just standing there and taking 45s, there were specific areas where you would work on, for instance, flicking the ball up with left foot, right foot, and things like that. So they'd be your arrival activities. So players would go and spend a few minutes in that before official training starts. So that way, what we were trying to do was bring the bespoke and extra training to them, as such, and now it becomes like a norm. You have like what which I think is phenomenal. Them the rebounders, right? Midfielder, nobody catches or coaches players how to jump and catch now, the basics of head position and stuff like that. So players can explore that while they're waiting for training to start up. So that's just about coaches being a little bit creative, like you bring in the arrival activities and having them ready, bringing up the players, and players will love that. So they'll kind of go to the area. You might have 3 of them set up a night. They will congregate in the area where they think they want to do a little bit of work on that. And again, it's not intense. They're not going to injure themselves, but they get a bit of time spending on fine-tuning some of the finer arts of the game that you'd love them to see them doing. Again, we do a lot of work now with smaller footballs, size 2 footballs, right, and size 3 footballs. And I tell you what that does is that refocuses your precision of passing. Fellas get so confident that they're executing motor skills for hand passing and stuff like that without even thinking. Sometimes you want them to think. Throwing a little ball, a smaller ball, they refocus their precision, their weight and depth, and the periphery vision, all that sort of stuff. They can all be done in arrival activities, and players feel they're getting something different, and in a low grade, low impact situation. So we do stuff like that and to try to get that stuff for them, keep them thinking.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant, Ross. That links in with the ILP, the individual learning plans. So every QPR player will have a plan about his job essentials and what he needs to do. And do you want to tell the listeners just how they're developed just quickly, and also at what stages of the training sessions they'll actually get an opportunity to practice them?
Yeah, so it's split into two, really. You've got your job essentials, which when they get to, let's say, under 15, the topper end of the pyramid and into the youth team, what are they going to need to be good at to get to the next level of the pyramid? So that's their job essentials. And defenders would have stopping the turn, 1v1 defending, whatever. And it's broken down into the details. But then you've also got the RP. So within that, what are they actually not specifically good at, which is, individual to them? Is it turning off their wooden side, off their left side? Is it their heading? Like you said, Colm, no one actually teaches people how to jump, use the arm, hang in the air, jump early. We just expect players to be able to defend the back post, but we don't teach them how to head the ball. So you have your individual programs, and then you have your job essentials, and they're linked to a degree, but they're individual to each player. And then there's different things. You've got arrival activities. You expect players to be working on their RPs before training, instead of just taking 40-yard free kicks. And also you have certain moments within the training where you'll go off, defenders will go and do. You'd have unit work, which I think most people are doing. But the biggest thing is that you're getting your individual programs in every session. And if the players shine a light on what they need to work on, whether you do a basic possession practice, whether you do a phase of play, whether you do an unopposed technical practice, they're getting what they need in that session. So they start to reflect on it in a different way. We're not just doing a passing and receiving drill. No, this is when I step into midfield and I create the overload. This is when I turn off my back foot and as the pivot man and spread, change the point of attack. So every player is getting their individual programs within training. So it's about educating the kids, educating the players about reflecting and developing over the years. And then over the years, their program changes. If they become more competent off their wooden side, their RP might be, okay, now we want you to clip 40 yards off the wooden side, not just a 10-yard pass. So we called it the zone of proximal development. It slightly shifts a little bit. But kids, just going back to your isolated practice, there's not one player who you think in any sport who is a phenomenal technician who can't do the practice unopposed. If Ronaldo couldn't take a free kick with no pressure, how is he expected to do it in front of 70,000 fans and with a wall there? So you have to make sure they're good at the basics with no interference, and then that gives them the tool to handle it in a very stressful environment. So big belief on the technical development, but how you transition that into gameplay is important.
Yeah, you're adding to their toolbox, aren't you? I think that last point, I think it'd be really nice, like in Gaelic football, in hurling, in every sport, that it doesn't matter how young, but a player can have their ILP. So what do they need to work on over the next few years specific to them? And I think it's worth investing the time into it. Okay, guys, we'll leave it at there. We've gone an hour and a quarter. We were hoping to keep it an hour, but we went an hour and a quarter. Really appreciate you lads coming on. It's brilliant to have people with such experience and knowledge. I think we could definitely do this again at some stage, I hope, in the next, over the coming months in the off season for the club. Colm, I know you'll be busy with Meath, and best of luck in that. But it'd be great to get you back on and have a proper chat again. Thanks to our sponsors, Ripped.app, for your support, as always. Stevie, we might, if you come across Joe Coulter some night, will you tell him his P45 is in the post? He's gone, he's done.
Ciaran, I will surely. Is that Benny's brother? But hey, on a serious hey, we'll come back on whenever it needs to throw Dublin in November in Croke Park. We'll be back on. I'm going to go on the beer with Colm for a few days up in Bennett or something like that.
There you go. There's the challenge, Colm, for you. There's the challenge. But especially Colm and Stevie, really appreciate it, lads. Thanks for coming on.
No problem.
Cheers, gents.